Today on X, I asked you what you thought were some of the worst booking decisions in the history of the WWE. And in today's video, we're going to be looking at your answers. We do these videos from time to time where I ask you something on X, you provide an answer, and then I make a video out of it. So if you want to be featured the next time that we do this type of video, make sure that you're following me on X. The link will be down in the description of this video. As always, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, ring that bell for notifications. If you're a wrestling fan, I know that you're going to fall in love with his YouTube channel because we always upload daily wrestling content. All right, let's look at your answers. This, referring to DX versus the Brothers of Destruction at Crown Jewel in Saudi Arabia. Here's the thing, I think you could take like 99% of the booking decisions that happened at these Saudi shows before Triple H took over, and you could add them to this list of some of the worst booking decisions of all time, because fellas, I don't know what was going on in the WWE headquarters, what was in the water, but around this time, the WWE was making some of the wildest booking decisions at these Saudi shows, like bringing people out of retirement that just had no business being out of retirement. For God's sake, man, they brought Shawn Michaels out of retirement, the guy who was already given the greatest retirement match of all time at WrestleMania 26 against The Undertaker, and they brought him back out of retirement for what? Well, one, of course, a shit ton of money probably, but for this metric butt ton of ass juice of a match. Frankly, I know money talks, but whoever agreed to this decision, not named Shawn Michaels, should be put on trial for crimes against humanity. Need I say more? Referring to The Rock taking Cody Rhodes' spot going into WrestleMania 40. I don't think that I've ever seen the wrestling community more united in one particular movement, which was to get Cody Rhodes to finish his story at WrestleMania 40. I know that the WWE will tell you this was the plan all along. We always knew what point A to point B was. It was just about how we got to the blah, blah, blah. Okay, no, this was 100% a pivot. No one will ever convince me that it wasn't. The cuckening of Cody Rhodes was just a bad decision, and the WWE, to their credit, made the best possible set of strategic chess moves to make this into the best decision ever, because WrestleMania 40 ended up becoming like the greatest night in professional wrestling, in my opinion, a night that I'm personally never going to forget, and it all started right here with this beautiful, terrible mistake. I'm still in utter disbelief referring to Alberto Del Rio winning the 2011 Royal Rumble. Let's be honest, fellas, the guy that should have won the 2011 Royal Rumble was 1,000% CM Punk. He was the best heel, and he should have won and gone to WrestleMania to probably face off against John Cena, who should have won the WWE Championship from The Miz before WrestleMania. That's clear cut. That should have been the play going into WrestleMania 27. Frankly, I don't think that anything could have saved WrestleMania 27 from being a bad show, but at the very least, CM Punk winning that and going up against Cena in the main event would have certainly helped. The problem with this as well is that it was a very non-committal victory for Alberto Del Rio, who was somebody that was pushed to the moon in his rookie year, but even in winning the Royal Rumble, it felt like the WWE always had one foot in the water and one foot out, like they didn't want to fully commit to Alberto Del Rio. Yes, they gave him an epic rookie year, won the Royal Rumble, but then he goes to WrestleMania and loses in a bit of a whimper match, which ended up being Edge's last match of his career at the time, but he never really recovered from this, and even winning this Royal Rumble never made Alberto Del Rio feel like a top heel in the company. He just sort of felt like he was always a plan B kind of guy, and to give the Royal Rumble victory to that type of guy just doesn't seem like the wisest choice. Inserting LA Knight into the undisputed title picture at Crown Jewel against Roman. Since he skipped the mid-card title, it took a year to work himself back into the mid-card title scene, which some see as a downgrade. I agree with everything that you're saying here. I do think that by nature, skipping the mid-card title was not the best decision for LA Knight, and going right into an undisputed championship match that unfortunately we all knew he was going to lose. He never felt like a super truly credible threat to Roman Reigns, just sort of made this match feel like a really glorified exhibition as we waited for Roman Reigns to inevitably win in the Roman Reigns style type of way that he typically wins in. But unfortunately, the byproduct of this, as you said, meant that now if he were to go immediately for the US title or any mid-card title, it would have immediately felt like a downgrade from this big position that he was given at Crown Jewel last year. So it took an entire year, as you said, to slowly work him back into that title picture in a way that made sense and in a way that didn't immediately feel like LA Knight was being buried down the card, as some people people would have argued. Anytime someone asks me this question, I just show them this picture. Goldberg beating the Fiend should have never happened. Yeah, I think this is like the quintessential example of some of the worst booking decisions that happened at these Saudi shows. I think that this is as bad as it gets. This should have never happened. Frankly, the Fiend should have never had the title to begin with, but there's no reason. There's no logical reason why the Fiend should have lost to Goldberg in such a quick and sadly human way. The whole allure of the Fiend was that he wasn't human, that he was something different, that he was something monstrous, something supernatural, and then to just lose to some spears and a jackhammer in about 5 minutes completely destroyed the aura that the Fiend had. Roman Reigns beating Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania 39. I do remember the narrative from a good chunk of people online saying that this was the worst booking decision ever at the time, with Solo Sikoa interfering, helping Roman win, and Cody Rhodes not being able to finish his story. I was not one of those people. I felt like Roman needed to win because I felt like there was just so much more story between Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns to tell for it to just end in their first meeting. On top of that, I wanted to see the fall of the Bloodline. I wanted to see Bloodline Civil War, which is ultimately what ended up happening at Money in the Bank. So there was just too much story to tell that we wouldn't have been able to properly tell had Roman Reigns lost that night. So I disagree here. This still doesn't make any sense to this day, referring to Jimmy Uso costing Jey Uso the world championship at last year's SummerSlam. You know what's funny? When I originally said this during my review of SummerSlam last year, if you go back to it and you read some of the comments, people were calling me an idiot. People were saying that I wasn't letting Triple H cook, that just let's let the story play out. But I just knew that it was asinine, that it didn't make any logical story sense for something like this to happen. There is some great retconning happening now with, now that we have Solo Sikoa taking on the power of the tribal chief and how it's corrupted him. That's actually great retconning that would actually legitimize this decision. But without that retconning, which is all it is, it's just retconning, this decision still doesn't make any fucking sense, and it was utterly stupid. For the health of SmackDown, this was the wrong decision. Even though we get a full-time champ, the quality just feels like it went down to me on SmackDown. Yeah, but this has nothing to do with Cody Rhodes being the champion. I think the problem is just poor, lazy booking that's currently happening on SmackDown, because what would be happening had Cody lost? I think the same thing, but just Roman Reigns being off screen and just not being on the show. I still think that SmackDown wouldn't be very good regardless of how all of this played out. I don't think that Cody Rhodes winning at WrestleMania 40 is the reason why SmackDown today is boring, frankly. Cedric not winning, this was really bad. Can I be honest with you? I think that this is like the most hipster trying to be different answer that I've seen, because I don't fucking remember this ever existing, if I'm being honest with you. Edge winning this, referring to the WrestleMania 39 match between Edge and the Demon Finn Balor. I obviously agree with you. I definitely believe that Edge should not have won this, that this should have gone the Demon's way, because Finn Balor was the guy that's going to be there for several years. The WWE already knew that Edge's contract was going to be up with the WWE in as little as like 3 months after this match. So they should have really used this as a launching off point, not just for Finn Balor, but also for the entirety of Judgment Day, who was finally able to put Edge away for good and then continue to build Judgment Day off of the back of this great victory. Obviously, Judgment Day would still go on to do great and huge things, but it could have been accelerated had they beat Edge, a guy that just didn't need this victory. First thing that came to mind was this, referring to Austin Theory's time as Mr. Money in the Bank. Dude, this was just so frustrating. Of course, you have all of the failed cash-in teases that just kept getting thwarted in some sort of Three Stooges way, and then the actual cash-in itself, that not only was it a failed cash-in, but it was a failed cash-in on a mid-card title. This was just terrible. I'm with you. This is up there for me.
He does. Why would you wear
Whoa!
fake? Oh, look at that.
See? Okay.
Time.
Oh. That was cool. Through. Get the pin, Cena.
Go.
Oh my God.
Oh God. than Roman's.
Folks, that was a sneak peek of this week's Wrestling is Cool SummerSlam Match Club, which is available exclusively over on patreon.com/SantiZap. This week, we're looking at Ricochet versus AJ Styles, SummerSlam 2019. The 2016 WWE Championship match between Dean Ambrose and Dolph Ziggler. The SummerSlam Classic at SummerSlam 2016 between John Cena and AJ Styles. A street fight between Dominic Mysterio and Seth Rollins at SummerSlam 2020. And the iconic SummerSlam 2022 main event between Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns. You're gonna get those 5 watch-alongs alongside the Raw review, the SmackDown review, and the podcast 3 days early. That's 8 pieces of extra content, all available on patreon.com/SantiZap. I'll put the link at the top of the description or in the pinned comment, but I'm confident that if you even give it 1 month that you're gonna fall in love with it. Now back to the video. He did not need it, LOL, referring to John Cena winning the Money in the Bank briefcase. To me, this is almost on par to Drew McIntyre winning the briefcase. Like, it was just not needed. They used the briefcase to elevate the feud between Cena, Punk, and The Rock, and I just don't think that needed elevating. Those were already the 3 biggest names in the industry at the time. I don't really think that you needed to sacrifice the Money in the Bank briefcase to get people excited for matches involving any combination of those 3 guys. It was just a waste of a briefcase. I'm with you here. I think this one is self-explanatory, referring to Triple H defeating Booker T at WrestleMania 19 for the World Heavyweight Championship. This is most definitely self-explanatory. This was a ridiculous decision to not have Booker T win, considering Triple H wasn't just the bad guy, but he was literally like the racist bad guy. He needed to lose this, and not only did he not lose this, he won by pedigreeing Booker T and then taking 23 seconds to pin him and still picks up the victory. It was just bad match choreography for 1, and then just 2, a terrible decision to have the racist guy win. This booking decision gave me a forever grudge for Charlotte Flair and ruined my whole night. Ever since, I've been waiting for an Asuka Mania win, referring to Asuka losing her undefeated streak to Charlotte Flair. Here's the thing, the undefeated streak needed to end at some point, but I felt like it needed to end after Asuka had won a Women's World Championship, and she needed to lose the streak and also lose the Women's World title at the time. But her just losing the streak while challenging for the Women's World Championship, that really knocked Asuka a few pegs down below, unfortunately. So I don't think that this is like the worst booking decision, but it definitely was not a good one, and it hurt Asuka in the long run, unfortunately. Drew McIntyre winning the Money in the Bank briefcase. I've gone off on this already ad nauseum at this point, but I'll say it again really quick. I hate that they used the men's briefcase to elevate a feud that was already at the top of the mountain. I hate that it was used to further fuel what was already a volcanic eruption that was CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre. It didn't need the briefcase being burned to elevate that feud. That was already the most interesting, most glue your eyes to the screen feud that's going on in all of professional wrestling right now. And to burn the briefcase on it, to me, seems highly unnecessary. This was one of the most disrespectful decisions I've ever seen, referring to Brock Lesnar defeating WWE champion Kofi Kingston in 5 seconds. Yes, this just was so stupid, and to this day, Kofi Kingston still hasn't gotten his rematch for the WWE championship. Look, this was just bad all around. It was a bad look as well, because it completely belittled everything that Kofi Kingston went through to become WWE champion, and completely belittled the trials and tribulations while he was champion, all the championship defenses, and almost like by default also belittled the people that he beat because they weren't able to beat him in 5 seconds. And in comes Brock Lesnar and boom, just destroys him with one F5. It was just bad. I don't understand it. I don't know what their end goal was with this. Obviously was to put the title on a bigger name, but I don't think that you needed to do this in 5 seconds. This did no favors for absolutely anybody. Sting losing to Triple H at WrestleMania 31. I feel like this was like the last demon that Vince McMahon wanted to exercise of WCW, because he just couldn't help himself to still, even like over a decade after he beat WCW, to finally put the last nail on the coffin of the last breathing bastion of WCW that was Sting. It was just so unnecessary. Look, I get it. You want to have your born and bred WWE guy be at the top of the mountain, but like Sting Sting had just joined WWE. This is a guy that was really for the first time being introduced to the WWE universe. One, the younger audience that weren't around for WCW, and two, the audience that didn't watch WCW. And to introduce him really with a loss right off the rip was just bad. The story was perfect. Still bothers me to this day that they never pulled the trigger on Finn. Obviously, hindsight, it helps us justify the decision here because Seth Rollins would go on to have an awesome world championship run that ended in a great way at WrestleMania 40. But at the moment when it happened, even I'm with you, man. I was not happy about Finn Balor losing this because this was the picture perfect story for Finn Balor to get back to the top of the mountain. Not only was it against the guy that injured him 7 years ago, it was for the world championship, just like the injury 7 years ago. And it was at SummerSlam, which is the show that the injury happened in. It was just like Haley's Comet, man. It finally came around. It took 7 years and they had the perfect moment to do it and they just didn't. Bret Hart gave Hogan, quote, permission to challenge Yokozuna for his title. This was an absolute garbage decision for a terrible WrestleMania. It's like the most Hulk Hogan thing that I've ever seen. It's honestly so Hulk Hogan that at this point it's funny. It's charming that this actually happened because this is the epitome of the that's not gonna work for me, brother, that's become so big in the wrestling community over the last year and a little bit. It's ridiculous that this happened. It's asinine, and it just showed the world that the WWE just wasn't ready to move past the Hulk Hogan era, or Hulk Hogan wouldn't let the WWE get past the Hulk Hogan era, man. It was just one of those guys that was clinging on to any last bastion of fame that he could in the WWE in refusing to let anyone else eat off of that plate. The Yes movement was strong here. I think they should have at least made it a longer match. Obviously, with the power of hindsight, we've talked a little bit about this already in this video. We can say that this was the right decision because it was this that made everyone become endeared and fall in love with Daniel Bryan. But at the time, this was fucking stupid. Daniel Bryan was such an entertaining champion, and having him lose in 28 seconds to Sheamus, yes, elevated Daniel Bryan shockingly because so many people were just so outraged by the decision that everyone fell in love with Daniel Bryan. But really the problem was what it did to Sheamus, because Sheamus would go on to become a babyface champion that everyone loathed because of this decision. This will never not be funny, referring to Jason Jordan being revealed to be Kurt Angle's long lost son. You had Chad Gable literally right there. You had him right there. Having this match be 3 minutes long. This one obviously hurts me because it's John Cena and The Undertaker, two guys that I truly love. But yeah, the decision to do it the way that they did was just ridiculous. Unfortunately, this match happened when they were both pretty well past their prime. This should have happened in the WrestleMania 20s, in that like awesome stretch of unbelievably good Undertaker matches. But I get it. Taker's streak was really protected. Cena as a whole was really highly protected, so it was difficult to make that happen, but they should have absolutely made it happen. And if you weren't going to give us that, at the very least, let them try and make something out of this. 3 minutes for a match involving two of the biggest names in the history of this sport is a travesty. Khali helping Jinder retain. How about I just do you one better? Jinder being champion in general. Cena burying the Nexus. Listen, I don't fully subscribe to this. I do think that obviously Cena buried the Nexus, and I personally just think that he accelerated the process. I think that they were going to get buried anyway. Aside from Wade Barrett, who did end up separating himself from the group and becoming the guy that would solidify himself as a single star in the WWE, I think they were all destined to be jobbers anyway, which is what they ultimately ended up becoming anyway. I just think that John Cena and the terrible booking decision at SummerSlam just sort of accelerated that movement. I do think it's weird that, you know, they push this faction so hard in that summer only for Cena to just eat them alive. That was a bit of a bizarre choice, but I think that it was going to happen at some point or another. Definitely Brock versus Cena 2012, referring to their match at Extreme Rules. So this was Brock Lesnar's first match back in the WWE since 2004. And he comes in, is a monster, destroys Cena, and in his first match, he loses. That really was weird. Brock Lesnar beating the streak. Yeah, we know. You already know, referring to Jack Swagger winning the Money in the Bank briefcase at WrestleMania 26. It's just so funny that they chose Jack Swagger with so many other much better options in that actual match. And yes, he would go on to become one of the least memorable Mr. Money in the Banks in the history of the Money in the Bank briefcase. Look, I get it. They were trying to create a new start. They just made a very, very bad judgment call, in my opinion. Vince burying Zack Ryder because he got over by himself. Isn't that crazy? That there was a time where the WWE would just be upset if you managed to become popular by any means that wasn't the machine, by any means that wasn't the writing staff or Vince McMahon's magic wand saying you are now a top guy. That's crazy that in the age of social media, because this was the onset of it, it was already big at this point, that using social media to get yourself over with the crowd was seen as somehow trying to bypass or game the system to the point where it got Zack Ryder punished. I don't get it. Nowadays, WWE superstars are all over social media, and if you get over on social media, I'm sure that they'll take advantage of that on WWE TV, but it was a different landscape back then. All right, folks, thanks so much for submitting your answers. Okay, goodbye. See ya. Take care. Bye. Get out of here.